You do everything the responsible adult is supposed to do. You pay your bills on time. You compare prices like it is a competitive sport. You hesitate before buying anything remotely unnecessary. You feel mildly guilty spending money on something enjoyable, which apparently is what maturity looks like now. You save when you can. You avoid obvious mistakes. You try not to be reckless like those mysterious people who somehow treat financial decisions like a party game. And yet, nothing really changes. Not collapse. That would at least be clear. Not disaster. No dramatic warning signs. Just this strange financial treadmill where you keep moving and somehow remain in exactly the same place, just older and slightly more tired. Meanwhile, some people making decisions that look objectively questionable seem to move faster. Not always, but often enough to be irritating, which creates an uncomfortable possibility. What if some of the advice that makes you feel financially responsible is also the exact advice keeping you financially stationary? Because if working hard, being careful, and following the approved script automatically created progress, a lot more disciplined people would be doing much better than they are. Funny how nobody loves that conversation. Wait for the user. Maybe your financial life looks painfully normal. You work. You try to be sensible. You do the small, responsible things people keep insisting matter. You compare prices before buying basic stuff. You postpone purchases because maybe next month feels smarter. You avoid debt when possible because debt is supposed to be the villain in every financial story. You try to be rational, not flashy, not impulsive, not the person buying things they clearly cannot afford while explaining it as self-care. You probably heard the same lines most people did. Save your money. Do not take unnecessary risks. A stable paycheck means security. Be grateful for consistency. Do not get too ambitious. That last one is rarely said directly, which is what makes it elegant. These ideas come from everywhere. Parents who wanted stability for you, teachers who rewarded predictability, coworkers who equate routine with wisdom, television experts speaking in polished certainty, social media finance accounts repeating advice so simplified it could fit on a coffee mug. And the uncomfortable part is this. Some of that advice is not wrong. That is exactly why it works. Bad advice that sounds ridiculous gets ignored. Advice that contains partial truth becomes cultural law. Yes, saving money matters. Yes, reckless decisions can destroy progress. Yes, stability has value. But partial truths become dangerous when they get promoted as complete strategies, because then disciplined people do exactly what they were told, and when results do not show up, they assume the problem is effort. Maybe I need to cut more. Maybe I need to be stricter. Maybe I should stop buying coffee, because apparently global economic systems collapse specifically around beverages. You are probably not financially stuck because you are irresponsible. If anything, you may be more disciplined than most people around you, which is exactly why this matters. Because if discipline is supposed to create progress, how does discipline sometimes create stagnation instead? The formula sounds beautifully simple. Be responsible, save money, build security, gain freedom, clean, sensible, socially approved. The kind of advice nobody questions because questioning it makes you sound unstable at family dinners. But reality has been doing something inconvenient. Prices rise. Housing gets more expensive. Income often grows slower than the cost of existing. Cash that once felt safe quietly buys less over time. So the exact strategy meant to reduce uncertainty starts creating a different kind of risk. Not dramatic risk, silent risk. Someone saves faithfully for years, feels proud of their consistency, then realizes the money they protected now buys less than when they started protecting it. That is a very strange reward system. Someone avoids changing jobs because stability feels responsible. They stay loyal, reliable, easy to depend on. 10 years later, they are underpaid, professionally stagnant, and being told loyalty builds character. Which is a lovely sentiment, especially when delivered by someone not sharing the financial consequences. Someone waits to invest because they want certainty. The market feels uncertain. The economy feels uncertain. The headlines feel uncertain. So they wait for a safer moment. Which, as history repeatedly demonstrates, is apparently scheduled for never. The issue is not effort. That part matters. The issue is the assumptions underneath the effort, because many financial rules people still follow were built around conditions that do not behave the same way anymore. And outdated assumptions are expensive. The most uncomfortable part is this. When an entire culture keeps repeating that safety equals progress, very few people stop to ask a simple question. If standing still keeps making people fall behind, who benefits from everyone believing they are being safe? Here's the shift that changes the whole conversation. Financial safety is not the same thing as financial progress. Those sound similar. They are not. Because money does not exist in a frozen environment where nothing moves unless you decide to move first. Prices move, markets move, opportunities move, industries move, skills gain value, then lose value. Entire business models become outdated while people are still attending meetings about optimizing fax machine efficiency. Slight exaggeration, barely. The point is simple. Standing still is still a position, and positions have consequences. Imagine trying to remain in the exact same spot on one of those airport moving walkways, except this one is moving backward. You are not walking forward. You are just trying not to lose ground. Now imagine deciding the safest strategy is doing absolutely nothing because movement feels risky. That is how a lot of financial behavior works. People think inactivity means neutrality. It does not. In a moving system, inactivity is a decision with an outcome. That is what many accepted money rules quietly ignore. And to be fair, some of those rules made more sense in different conditions. If purchasing power was more stable, if economic shifts were slower, if loyalty was rewarded more predictably, conservative habits could carry people further. But advice often survives long after the environment that made it useful disappears. Cultural financial advice has terrible software update habits. This is not an argument for recklessness. It is not saying every cautious person is wrong or every aggressive move is smart. Some risks are just expensive life lessons wearing confidence. The point is narrower and much more important. Confusing inactivity with safety is costly, because avoiding visible risk can quietly increase invisible risk. And once you see that, a much better question appears. If caution by itself does not create progress, then what actually does? To answer that, we need to fix one very common definition problem. Most people think risk means the obvious bad things: losing money in the market, a business failing, making a bad investment, taking a job that does not work out. These are visible risks. They are easy to imagine because they come with stories, warnings, and the occasional relative who becomes dramatically philosophical after one bad stock purchase. But visible risk is only half the picture. There is also invisible risk. Inflation quietly reducing purchasing power, staying in a low-growth career too long, skills becoming less valuable while newer ones become more valuable, missing years of compounding because waiting felt safer, watching opportunities pass because certainty never arrived. These risks rarely feel urgent in the moment. That is exactly what makes them effective. If you touch a hot stove, you react immediately. If your purchasing power declines slowly over years, there is no alarm sound. Just a gradual realization that normal life somehow became more expensive while your strategy remained emotionally comforting. So core idea number 1 is this. Risk has more than one form, and avoiding one category often increases exposure to another. Now, core idea number 2. Financial advice is deeply dependent on context. Advice sounds timeless because humans love simple rules. Simple rules reduce thinking effort. They also age badly. Take the phrase, just save your money. That assumes your money maintains meaningful purchasing power over time. Sometimes that is reasonable. Sometimes it is not. Take the idea, stay loyal to one employer and your hard work will be rewarded. That assumes organizations reward loyalty consistently. Sometimes they do. Sometimes your reward is a commemorative email and responsibilities that somehow expanded without compensation. Take the advice, wait until things feel more certain. That assumes opportunities remain equally available later. That is a dangerous assumption. Markets move. Industries change. Pricing changes. Competitive advantages disappear. Delay is not always neutral. The issue is not that these ideas were invented by evil masterminds in expensive suits. Most cultural advice starts as practical guidance in a particular environment. Then conditions change. But the advice survives because repetition feels like proof. People inherit rules optimized for a world that may no longer exist. That creates a very specific trap. Disciplined people follow outdated instructions with remarkable consistency. Now, core idea number 3. Progress usually requires exposure, not recklessness. Exposure. That distinction matters. Recklessness is taking risk without understanding. Exposure is intentional participation in systems that can produce growth, investing with discipline, building valuable skills. Negotiating income instead of assuming effort gets noticed telepathically. Owning productive assets. Testing ideas with controlled downside. Creating optionality. These behaviors involve uncertainty. That makes many people uncomfortable. But uncertainty alone is not the enemy. Uncompensated stagnation is not exactly a better deal. The goal is not becoming someone who chases every trend, buys every hot asset, or confuses adrenaline with strategy. The goal is becoming someone who understands that growth usually requires participation, because money does not reward spectators particularly well. And when you combine all 3 ideas, the mechanism becomes clear. People define risk too narrowly. They fear visible losses. So they choose strategies that minimize obvious discomfort. But those same strategies increase exposure to slow, invisible losses. And because invisible losses do not feel dramatic, they often go unquestioned for years. That is how disciplined, intelligent, responsible people end up financially stuck while believing they are doing everything correctly. Let's make this less abstract. Because invisible financial mistakes become much easier to spot when they have names, timelines, and mildly uncomfortable comparisons. Example 1. The saver versus the investor. Person A keeps $20,000 in cash for years because cash feels safe. No market stress, no volatility, no bad headlines ruining breakfast, just reassuring stillness. Person B invests gradually with discipline, not gambling, not chasing internet miracles, just consistent exposure to productive assets over time. Now, reality check. If inflation averages even a modest rate across several years, Person A may technically still have the same amount of money while functionally having less buying power. The number looks unchanged. The usefulness changed. That is the trick. Invisible losses preserve the appearance of safety. Meanwhile, Person B experiences fluctuations, some uncomfortable months, maybe some ugly headlines. But if the underlying investments are sound and time is long enough, compounding starts doing what compounding does, quietly, then noticeably. No guarantee, no straight line. But at least the strategy participates in growth instead of merely observing economic movement from a safe distance. Example 2. The loyalty myth. Person A stays with the same employer for 10 years. Reliable, cooperative, hardworking, never asks for much, assumes good work gets recognized. Which would be beautiful if institutions consistently behaved like motivational posters. Over time, raises are modest, responsibilities increase, inflation keeps existing, which was root of it. Person B develops skills deliberately, tracks market value, negotiates compensation, changes roles strategically when opportunities make sense. Not every move works perfectly. But over the same period, Person B often compounds earning power far faster. Why? Because labor markets also reward movement, leverage, and updated positioning, not just patience. Example 3. Waiting for perfect timing. Person A says they will invest when things feel safer. Then markets feel uncertain. Then elections happen. Then economic reports look strange. Then global headlines become dramatic, as they reliably do. So they wait. A year passes. Then more time. Then they discover the thing they were waiting to buy is more expensive than when they first felt uncertain. Which is almost funny if it is happening to someone else. This does not mean timing never matters. It means perfection is often a disguised delay strategy. And delay has cost, important nuance. Not every risk pays off. Some investments fail, some job changes backfire, some business ideas deserve to fail quickly. This is not a fairy tale where every bold move gets rewarded. The point is not that movement guarantees success. The point is that avoiding movement guarantees exposure to certain costs too, And those costs are harder to notice because nothing dramatic happens. No explosion, no catastrophe, just gradual erosion. That is why invisible losses are so dangerous. They do not feel like mistakes while they are happening. This is where the conversation gets psychological, because financial stagnation does something strange to people. When something fails visibly, at least the story is clear. Bad investment, wrong decision, expensive mistake, painfully educational. But when nothing obviously fails and progress still does not happen, people usually turn the blame inward. Maybe I am not disciplined enough. Maybe I spend too much. Maybe I need stricter rules. Maybe the problem is that sandwich I bought 3 Thursdays ago. It becomes self-interrogation without useful diagnosis. Because if the framework is flawed, increasing effort inside the same framework just creates more efficient stagnation. That is a deeply frustrating experience, and predictability makes this worse. Humans do not just evaluate financial decisions logically. We evaluate them emotionally. Predictability feels safe. Routine feels responsible. Familiar advice feels trustworthy, even when outcomes suggest otherwise, because uncertainty creates discomfort immediately. Invisible decline creates discomfort later. Most people naturally prefer delayed discomfort, especially when the present version comes with social approval. That matters more than people admit. If your parents repeated the same advice, your co-workers repeat it, online experts repeat it, and financially cautious people you respect repeat it, disagreeing starts to feel irresponsible. Not incorrect. Irresponsible. That is a powerful psychological barrier. Social validation can make weak strategies feel intelligent simply because they are widely accepted. And the longer everyone repeats the same script, the more normal it feels. So people optimize for emotional comfort instead of economic reality. They choose what feels stable, what feels respectable, what feels familiar. And familiarity is often mistaken for safety. That confusion gets expensive over time, because the market does not reward emotional comfort. Inflation does not pause out of respect for your cautious personality. Opportunity does not remain frozen while you become emotionally ready, which leads to an uncomfortable realization. Sometimes the thing that feels financially safe is not actually safe. It is just familiar. So let's make this clean. Being cautious was not irrational. Following accepted financial advice was not evidence that you were naive. Most people adopted these beliefs for a simple reason. They were socially rewarded. Caution sounds mature, stability sounds responsible, risk avoidance sounds intelligent. And sometimes in specific situations, those instincts are absolutely useful. But the lie was never that saving money is bad, or that caution is bad. That would be a ridiculous conclusion, usually delivered by someone trying to sell you a course with far too many exclamation marks. The actual lie is more subtle. That caution alone creates progress. It does not. Caution can protect. It can reduce damage. It can create breathing room. Those things matter, but protection is not the same as advancement. Financial progress usually comes from participation, from adaptation, from informed exposure, from understanding that money exists inside moving systems, not inside motivational slogans. Safety is a tool, not a destination. And once you understand that, a lot of personal guilt becomes easier to examine honestly. Because maybe the problem was not that you lacked discipline. Maybe the strategy itself was incomplete. That does not mean becoming reckless. It means defining risk correctly. It means recognizing that invisible losses count. It means understanding that standing still inside a moving environment is still a financial decision, possibly an expensive one. The most dangerous financial advice is rarely the advice that sounds dangerous. Dangerous advice usually arrives dressed as responsibility. Calm voice, reasonable wording, social approval. That is what makes it effective, and that is exactly why so many intelligent people believe it. So now I am curious. What financial belief did you accept for years before you started questioning it? Was it the idea that saving alone was enough? That loyalty automatically gets rewarded? That waiting for certainty is somehow a strategy instead of a delay with better branding? Drop it in the comments. These conversations get more useful when real experiences show up, not just polished financial cliches. If this gave you a useful perspective, like this video and share it with someone who still believes playing safe and making progress are automatically the same thing. And if you value this kind of thinking, subscribe.